Hi, polar bears. It's Eva Pohler here from San Antonio, Texas, live to talk about 5 ways to overcome a reading slump. I'd love to hear where you're all from. I'm so excited to see so many of you here with me today. Please just in the comments tell me what city or state or country are you joining me from today. I'd love to see where people are. Awesome. I'm so excited. Excellent. Hi there. Hi, Rhonda. So good to see you. Oh, I'm so happy to see other people joining us live on Facebook. Oh, great. Okay, well, today, as I said before, I am going to talk to you about 5 ways to overcome a reading slump. We've all been there. You've got all these ebooks on your e-reader, paperbacks on your shelves, and all these TBR lists, wish lists of books you want to read, and you just can't get in the right frame of mind. You know what I'm talking about? Have any of you ever had that experience before? If so, just say yes. Just let me know, yes, that you can relate, that you've been there before, where you want to read, but for whatever reason, you just can't get in the right frame of mind. For some reason, you're just not psychologically there or ready. You just can't do it. It's almost like when you want to start a diet, you want to, you know it's good for you, you know that you thrive when you do it, but you just can't. Sometimes reading can feel like that. You want to do it, but unlike being on a diet, you know that once you do get over that reading slump and you start reading, that you're just going to be so happy you did, because you remember what it's like to be in this world that you enjoy and to be experiencing these characters that you feel connected to, and you miss it and you just can't get there for some reason. Hi. Oh, I'm so excited to see you here with me today. Thanks so much for joining me. I got to put on my glasses to see everyone. Hi. Thank you. Rachel, I'm so glad you're here. Mariella, it's good to see you. This is so awesome. This is Mo behind me. I don't know if you can see him. he thinks he's a cat. He loves sitting on the chair behind me. Tell me where you're from. Those of you who are just now coming on, I'd love to know, what town are you from, or state or country. You don't have to be too specific if you don't want to be. It's just great seeing where people are from all around. I was just asking if you've ever had that experience of feeling like you're in a reading slump. Even though you're a reader, you know you love being in this world with favorite characters. You love experiencing these adventures, these journeys that they go on, and you know from experience that once you get into a book, that oh, so cute. I can see him on my screen. Once you get into a book, you're so glad you did. But have you ever experienced that? Just say yes if you have, and let me know so I know if I'm talking to people who can relate. You remember, Mosby, where are you going? Mosby Mo. Okay, he's gonna go. That's okay. Go ahead. He's gonna leave us for a little while. I guess he did like being on video. But anyway, you really want to experience these characters' victories, their heartaches, their love, their ups and downs. They make you feel alive. And so you miss that, and you really want to get back into your into a book. And so anyway, I thought this would be a really great opportunity to talk to people about things that I do to overcome reading slumps. And this Tea with Eva, Tuesday Tea with Eva, is going to be a weekly occurrence. So, and I'll always post the replay later. So if you can't join me live, no problem. And every time I do this, I'm going to try to offer something of value that I'll give you at the end, or, maybe that's related to the talk that I'm giving. And I'm just really hoping it'll help us feel more connected in this community. It's especially important right now where we have stay-at-home quarantines going on, and we can't really get out and socialize. And not that I ever did that a whole lot anyway. If you're like me, you might be more of an introvert. But I do think community is important, and I do think it's great if we can do something like this. For the rest of this semester, I teach part-time at Trinity University here in San Antonio, and so we had to move to doing Zoom classes like this, and that's where I got the idea of doing these little live streams, because I enjoyed so much spending time with my students this way. You know, I would sit here in my chair with my dog on my, on the back of me here, and I usually wouldn't even wear a bra, or definitely not shoes, and it was so comfortable to be able to share time with people on this. Continue to tell me, those of you, welcome if you're just now joining us. I'm so excited to see you. Yes, please let me know where you're from. I love seeing where people are from. Let me know if you've experienced having a reading slump. And also, I'm curious, what's the longest reading slump you've ever had? I have gone for like months without reading before. And I've done that with writing too. I remember before I published, I mean, I've been writing for years, and I remember before I ever published, there would be times where I would go for a couple of years without writing and wondering if it was really even my calling, because I would go through these phases. And I kind of do that with reading, where sometimes I'll read like, I don't know, a book a week, and then there are times when it'll take me a whole month to read, and then I might go several months without even picking up a book. What's the longest any of you have ever gone with a reading slump? I'm just curious. Has it been longer than a month, longer than a year? Have you gone more than a year without reading? Even though it brings you so much joy, I can understand that. Yeah. So today I'm going to talk to you about 5 things that have always worked for me. At least one of these 5 things have worked for me that I think that will help you as well. And the first one is to reread a favorite book. This is my go-to strategy because it always works. And let me preface this by saying that I kind of had an epiphany not too long ago that there are really 2 things that we worry about when we're trying to decide whether we're ready to read something. We'll ask ourselves, what if I don't like this book? And then the other thing we ask ourselves is, what if I don't have time to read this book? So before we pick up a book and read it, those are the things that we ask is, what if I don't like this book? And what if I don't have time to read it? And those are our fears that we have to overcome when we're dealing with a reading slump, or anytime we're about to start, we finished one book and we want to start another one, and we think we want to start another one. What if I don't like this book? And what if I don't have time to read it? So when it comes to trying to overcome the reading slump, those are the 2 fears that we basically have to deal with, those 2 fears. And so that's what I was considering when I was coming up with these 5 methods or 5 strategies. Mosby, are you trying to get back up here with me? My puppy dog is trying to get around my laptop so he can get back into his favorite spot behind me. I don't know if he's going to make it or not without just totally, making my laptop fall down. Mosby, what are you doing? Okay. So anyway, the first one is to reread a favorite book. And what's great about this strategy is that you immediately overcome that first fear, what if I don't like the book? Because you like the book. You've already read the book. And so then you just have to deal with, what if I don't have time to read this book? And so I've come up with a strategy that has helped me, and I really highly recommend trying to do this to help you get over making the amount of time that you need, is just to give yourself 10 minutes a day at first. Say 10 minutes when I first wake up in the morning and I have my cup of coffee and I'm just trying to wake up. I'll just read a book that I've already read for 10 minutes while I sip on my tea or check my emails, or before I check my emails, I guess, or after I check my emails. Or maybe 10 minutes at night before you go to bed. This book that you love, you'll just reread it until you fall asleep. Or maybe if you have a chance to take a break, especially if you work during the day and you have like a lunch break or a mid-morning break where you get to have a snack, maybe say, okay, while I have my break, I'm going to just read for 10 minutes. And you'll be surprised how just after doing this for a few days, you start getting right back into it, you know, and you remember, you start getting your flow back, you start getting back into your zone. So by picking a book that you've already read before, who's, you know, the characters you love, you overcome that fear of what if I don't like this book, and you just have to deal with what if I don't have time to read this book. And by implementing this 10-minute a day strategy, where it's just like when you're first getting started with your day, you're winding down from your day, or maybe in the middle of the day when you want to take a break. And you could even say, I don't get to have my snack or my tea or my coffee or my wine at night or whatever it is, and get my book out and open. And once my book is out and open, now, you know, I can have my snack or my wine or whatever. So the second strategy is to read the book version of a TV show or movie that you loved. So if it's been a while since you've picked up a book and you've been like me, you've been kind of binging on Netflix, and there's a show on there that has a book version, and you love those characters, then that helps you overcome that first fear. What if I don't like this book? If you enjoyed the TV show or the movie version, chances are that you're going to love the book version even more, because as we all know, the book version is almost always better than the TV version or the movie version. So let me know, are there any shows, or what shows have y'all been watching, or movies that are book adaptations that you think you might like to read? I just finished watching the most current season of Outlander, and I have been wanting to read those books. And I'm thinking I might just get started as soon as I'm right now I'm on a writing deadline. As you know, I have the Marcella 2 coming out at the end of the month, and I'm trying to finalize it. But once I do, I think I'm going to pick up the Outlander series and get started on it because I'm enjoying the television show so much. So have you guys been watching any shows or any movies where you think, hey, I think I'd like to read that book series? Or maybe you've already done that. You've already watched a movie or a series that inspired you to pick up a book. Another one that I thought that I might enjoy, and this just shows you how varied I am, but I also really enjoyed the Vampire Diaries. And I actually watched that series twice. I went through it twice because I enjoyed it so much. I think I was just in love with Damon Salvatore. But I thought, I wonder if the books, you know, how I would enjoy reading the books. And so the next time I'm in a reading slump, I happen to not be in one right now, but the next time I'm in a reading slump, that might be a series that I pick up. And again, it helps you overcome that fear. What if I don't like this book? And then it's just a matter of dealing with the fear. What if I don't have time for this book? And so again, using that same method where you just go 10 minutes a day at first, you'll find that you won't need to set aside 10 minutes a day once you get back into the reading. Once you relish the feeling of being with the characters, you won't need to force yourself to, I can't have this wine until I read this book, you know. But it's just those first few days that you have to say, okay, 10 minutes aside before I go to bed or when I first wake up. So the third strategy now, so I've talked about rereading a book you love, reading a book from a world that you're already familiar with from watching it on TV or a movie version. The third strategy is to read a book by an author you've read and enjoyed before. Again, this will help overcome the fear, what if I don't like this book? Because none of us want to waste time on a book that we don't like. So that's one of the most paralyzing things. The thing that stops us most often from overcoming a reading slump is when we pick up a book, well, what if I don't like it? I end up wasting my time. That's the number one thing. And so if you find a book by an author you've already read and enjoy, particularly if that book shares the world of some books that you've already read, that will help you overcome that first fear. What if I don't enjoy? Chances are, if you enjoyed a book by an author once before, you will enjoy another. Now, that's not always true. I mean, I've read multiple books by authors before where I've been disappointed with this or that, but while I loved another. But it's not frequently that happens. And And that doesn't prevent me from ever picking up another book from that author. So it is still somewhat of a risk, but definitely not a greater risk than just picking up a brand new book from someone you've never heard of before. So read a book by an author that you know that you trust, because you've already read books from this before. And then again, use that same method for overcoming the fear. What if I don't have time for this book? By setting aside. And just out of curiosity, if you did have to do this method where you set aside 10 minutes, would you be more likely to do it in the morning when you're first getting going in the morning? Are you more of a, I'm going to set aside 10 minutes in the morning when I'm having my coffee on my back patio and I'll read then? Or are you more of a night owl where I like to pick up my book right before I go to bed? Just let me know in the comments, morning, night. Or are you more of the middle of the day? I like to take a break from my work while I'm having lunch, and you're more of a middle of the day kind of person, just out of curiosity. Okay, awesome. That's great. So I've talked about the first 3 strategies, and now I'm going to introduce one that some of you might be resistant to. And that is to listen to an audiobook. How many of you already listen to audiobooks? I'm just curious. Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good idea. Thank you for sharing that, Rhonda. You had read the Sookie Stackhouse books and then you watched True Blood. Yeah, I agree that books tend to be way better. Yeah, that's another thing is to read the book and then watch the show. But when overcoming a reading slump, sometimes it's nice to have a world and characters that you already love and find the book version. And yeah, rarely are you disappointed when you go that direction, when you see the show first and then read the book. It's usually, the disappointment usually comes when you go the other way, right? When you read the book and then you go to watch the show, because the show, as much as I enjoy television and film, I feel like it's so hard to capture the depth that a book can bring. But, we're all biased because we're primarily readers, right? But back to my 4th strategy of listening to an audiobook. This one really focuses more on that second fear. What if I don't have time to read the book? Because with an audiobook, it is such a time saver when you listen to an audiobook. Now, I know I've had plenty of people tell me that they just have trouble focusing when it comes to audiobooks, that their minds wander. And I'm going to be addressing this problem, and not in next week's segment, but the next. My 3rd segment in this Tuesday Tea with Eva is going to deal with how to focus or get the most out of audiobooks. I feel like I'm an expert because audiobooks have been my go-to way to read books lately because it's such a time saver. In fact, often I find that using the audiobook while I'm loading and unloading the dishwasher or waiting in line, like at the bank or in the grocery store or in traffic, if I have an audiobook, and I almost always have one on my phone, it just makes anything where you have to wait or you have some kind of like tedious, mindless thing you have to do more enjoyable. And I've even found, I'm going to talk about this when I have my segment in 3 weeks, how having that tedious task that you're doing, whether it's waiting in line or, doing some household chore, actually makes it easier to focus on the audiobook. So you can be doing something, instead of just sitting there and reading, which I don't have a problem with just sitting here and reading. But if you're busy and you're worried that you won't have time to read the book, trying it an audiobook be a great strategy to get over the reading slump, because you can be doing other mindless activities while you're listening to the book, and it can be a time saver. You can even listen to the audiobook. You can change the pace of the reading. So if you wanted to speed up the narration, you have that option. Now, I don't do that because I enjoy listening to the narrator in regular time, but I know a lot of book bloggers who, have a big TBR list and have a lot of reviews that they've promised to get out. And so they'll listen to their audiobooks on double time. I can't imagine how that probably sounds, I don't know, but people do it. So I'm just curious, are any of you already audiobook listeners? Are any of you that are here with me today, do you already listen to audiobooks? I'm just curious. Yeah? Yes, absolutely. Tina says audiobooks in traffic are a love saver. I think a time saver too. I can't tell you how much being in a traffic jam becomes a much more pleasant experience when you have an audiobook going on in the car. Oh my gosh. And I bet road rage could be dramatically reduced if more people had audiobooks going on in the car during rush hour. I believe that too. Yeah, I almost always have an audiobook active on my phone. So back before the pandemic, when I would walk from class to class, I'd go all the way across campus from my office, or if I'm just arriving from my car. And I mean, I can get 10 minutes of an audiobook in while I'm walking across campus. And so, yeah, in the grocery store, if you have a list and, you can just listen to your audiobook while you're, going from aisle to aisle, it just makes it so much more pleasant, especially if you're there with a whole bunch of other people and you just want to, get in and do your thing. So yeah, the audiobook thing helps with that second fear. What if I don't have time? Although you could listen, something that I do a lot is re-listen to a book that I've already listened to. And then I get both, what if I don't like this book? What if I don't have time? Both. So if you're in a really dire reading something, you just can't get going, and you don't mind audiobooks, if you enjoy audiobooks and you've learned to be able to focus, re-listening to one, I have a go-to one that I always listen to when I'm really in a slump, and that is The Host by Stephanie Meyer. I don't know what it is about that book. I just love it. I have re-listened to that book so many times. Do you have books that you've reread or re-listened to just an almost embarrassingly an amount of times? What books have you reread or re-listened to when you're in a slump and you just need a book that is going to be enjoyable? Do you have books that you've reread multiple times? I know I have had several of you tell me that you've reread some of my series multiple times. Whenever I send out newsletters, and sometimes people will respond with, I've reread the Gatekeeper Saga, which is now the Underworld Saga, like 7 times, and that makes me feel so good. But yeah, that's definitely a great way to overcome those 2 fears. And then the very last strategy that I'm going to mention to you today is keeping a reading log. Now, this isn't for everyone, but it's definitely for people like me. And I was just talking about this with my daughter yesterday, how much I have in common with the character Jane the Virgin. Have any of you ever watched Jane the Virgin? And if you haven't, I highly recommend it, because I don't know, it's hilarious. It is so hilarious. The characters are so lovable. And I don't know, I just think, especially now when there's so much going on, it's a great show to just get your mind off of things. Jane the Virgin, I highly recommend it. But I'm like her in that I love writing everything down, planning, scheduling, having calendars, and having a reading log helps me especially when I'm in a slump, because it helps me have goals and be able to, I love the feeling of being able to check things off of my list. And sometimes if I've had a really productive day and I didn't make a list, I'll just make a list after the fact, just so I can have the feeling of checking things off. Have you ever done that before? Are any of you even list makers? I may be talking to people who don't relate, but maybe some of you are like me and you like to make lists and you like to make plans. And a reading log is great because you can see what you've read. And I've got this reading log that I use all the time. In fact, I'll put a link in the comments in a minute to that reading log. If you would like to download it and print it out, it's real pretty. I kind of customized it for my own needs, and you can probably do that too. Before you print it, you could edit it if you wanted to like change the columns out in some way. But I love using it because it helps me see the progress that I've made, and it makes me feel good to be able to check things off. Yes, I read that book. Yes, I read that book. And I used to be a big time reviewer before I became a published author, or even within the first couple of years of becoming a published author. I even had a book blog that you can probably still find out there. Because I never you know, took it off or anything, of books that I'd read and reviewed. But once I became a published author, I didn't think it was right to review the books of colleagues. I only wanted to be able to say positive things. I didn't want to say negative things about people in my industry. And so then I started worrying, well, then if I don't review a book that I've read and it's been on my Goodreads, currently reading, then maybe that author will think it's because I didn't like it. So I just pretty much stopped reviewing books because of that reason. But I used to review a lot. And so this reading log kind of has like a column for keeping track of reviews for that reason. But I feel like having that reading log, if you're not a list maker and you're not someone that likes to plan, could paralyze you even more. So this really isn't the best strategy for people who maybe feel overwhelmed by lists, and if seeing things on a list make you feel overwhelmed instead of motivated, then maybe the reading log isn't the right answer for you, because it might just be one more, become a burden instead of a pleasure. But so that one's not going to be for everyone. But it's something to even try just once. It might help. So there you have it. Those are my 5 ways to overcome a reading slump. Just sort of summarize. Read a book that you've already read before to kind of get you going, setting aside 10 minutes a day to help overcome the time factor until you get into your groove. Read the book version of a movie or television show that you already love, so that you'll enjoy the characters and the world. Read a book by an author that you've already read and enjoyed before, because you're familiar with that person's work. It's likely that you're going to enjoy another book. Try an audiobook, because that will help you with time. You can do so many things while you're listening to an audiobook. Walk your dogs, or just walk yourself, be in line, do household chores, and keep a reading log. A reading log can motivate some people to want to read that next book. So I hope these tips were helpful to you and you got something out of it. Like I said, I am going to post a link. Before I go, though, did any of you have any questions for me? You have any questions? Oh, yes. Rachel says she loves jumping between reading books and listening to the audiobook version. Yeah, I love that too. If you can get both the Kindle version and the audiobook version of something, so that you can curl up with the book with your tea and read it on your reading device at night, and then when you have to drive around or go to the bank or go to the grocery store, you can be listening to it on your audiobook. That's heaven to me. I'm the same exact way. But before I go, I was wondering if any of you had any questions for me. Any questions about the Marcella 2, which is coming out. It's going to be released on May 31st, which is only just a little more than 2 weeks away. I'm super excited for you to read it, because like I've told you before, this is a crossover between the Vampires of Athens and the Underworld saga, formerly the Gatekeeper saga. Those characters are meeting and working together with this adventure with vampire pirates, which have been so fun to write about. And I just love the intrigue, the adventure, and even some of the romance that I've got going on in the series. So I'm super, super pumped and hope you'll enjoy it. And I'm writing it so that people who aren't familiar with the Vampires of Athens or the Underworld saga can start here. This could be the first book of mine that they've read, and they can still enjoy the series without having the background information on, Gertie and Hector, or Hermie and Hesty and Poros and Therese and Than and Hypnos and Jen. They can start with this book, and then I'm hoping that it will spark an interest in them to go back to what I'll call the origin stories of these characters. So the idea is that they'll read the Vampires and God series, or even just the first book, and while they're waiting on the second, be like, oh, I want to know more about Gertie and Hector, so I can go read the Vampires of Athens, or I want to know more about Therese and Than and Hermie and Hesty and Poros, so I'll go back and read the Underworld saga. And so I'm hoping that it will be just another way to bring people into that world and with those characters, and bring new readers into the world and into our family here in the Polar Bear Lounge. So any questions or thoughts for me? Oh, thank you, Rachel. I'm so glad you're counting down for this series. Yeah, I'm super, super pumped. Well, I feel like I've outstayed my visit, so to speak. I meant for this to be a 15-minute video, and I'm looking at it now. I'm like, whoa, I'm almost at 30 minutes. So it's gone by a lot faster than I meant to. And I want to get that link up there for you. And maybe I can just do it really quickly for the reading log. If I do that, can you still see me, or do I disappear? When I switch windows like that, can someone tell me, do I disappear? Let me do it again. Have I disappeared now from the screen, or am I still visible even though I'm on a different website now? I'm actually going to my own website to get the link for the reading log, and I'm just curious because this is my first live stream, if I'm still there on camera or do I disappear. Here is the link in the comments for the reading log if anybody wants to download it. And thank you all for coming, and I hope I'll see you next Tuesday for Tuesday Tea with Eva. I'll be talking about what to do with a busy schedule, some things that I do to squeeze reading into my day. I've already talked about the 10 minutes in the morning and the 10 minutes in the evening, but I have some other strategies that help me get the most out of my day so that I can get some reading in there. And I'll be talking about those tips with you next week. So thanks so much for coming. Y'all have a great day, and I'll see you hopefully next week. Bye-bye.